And welcome to the show. My name is Naeem Sharif. We have a special guest today. This is a part 2 of Eat with Muslims, and we're going to be talking about this organization, what they do, and then some other topics that are going to come. To my right is Elise. Next to her is Fatia, and then we have Brother Benjamin. Brother Benjamin, would you lead us in prayer so we can get going here?
Okay, we're going to just briefly ask for Allah's protection and that we're doing this in His name and power. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ameen.
Amen. Brother Benjamin, I think we're going to start off with you. I know you have some questions, and we have our wonderful sisters here today who are doing great work with an organization called Eat with Muslims, where they, this is part 2 of the show, where they have had Muslims sit down with non-Muslims and break bread and, talk about everyday things and also about the religion, and where it's something that people get to know each other. So I'll just leave it right there.
Yeah, I just want to add also that, the sisters did a wonderful show with us, and we kind of twisted their arm to stay and do another show. So this is part 2 of the same show for the same day. So we just want to make that clear so people would know that what's really going on. So sisters, could you want to briefly explain to us what Eating with Muslims is?
So Eat with Muslims is a project under Noor Village, which is an organization Fatia and I started in 2016, December 2016. And our official first dinner was January of 2017. And it's an organization that works to build bridges between Muslims and non-Muslims through breaking bread, eating a good meal, and talking about any various topics ranging between, what the different faiths are like, what Muslims' lifestyles and practices are, and, any casual conversations that we can share so that we can build relationships between our community members here in Western Washington.
Okay. So now, we were asked to participate in one of your Eat with Muslims was it St. Joseph High School?
St. Joseph's Catholic Church.
St. Joseph's Catholic Church, yeah. And it was really an outstanding event. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that, how that got kicked off.
So in the beginning, when we started the project, both of us just moved here from different states. She moved from Washington, D.C., I moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We both used to live here. She went away for school, I went away for work. And so when we talked about the project and the importance of doing something like this, we realized we both didn't know a lot of people because we've been gone for a while. So we decided to organize group dinners and bring people together that way. But then then there was a story, our story. We had an interview done by KUAW, NPR, and the story got out. So many people reached out to us, and so many churches reached out to us. And so so we did 2 dinners with 2 different churches, and then a third church reached out to us, St. James, and the priest at St. James happens to be a woman, a wonderful woman named Joyce Barrymore. And Joyce and I co-wrote a play together, 1-act play called One Cup of Tea, between 2 neighbors, Muslims, a Muslim neighbor, Muslim and a Christian, 2 females that are neighbors who don't really know each other. They only wave at each other once in a while when they see each other. But then one day, once they got the chance to sit together and share a cup of tea, they found out that they have so much more in common. They talk about how Mary in the Quran is the only female that has been the Quran mentioned by name, right? If I'm not mistaken. And how that Isa alayhi salam is our prophet, Moses our prophets, and so we have all this and we talk about the fact that we're both women and our struggles, and you know, so it's a half. It's like 20 minutes long, so it's one act of a play, and then the word got out, and more churches reach out to us, and they already have building congregations, and so that's one of the churches that reached out to us at our last dinner that you were part of, which was just wonderful.
Wonderful. So tell us, how can we get a copy of this tape, this play?
Oh, the play. So we only did. I don't think it was videotape. We use an iPad to do a little bit of videotaping, but we're planning to actually turn this into a longer version of 3-act play. So we're rewriting the play. We're working on that, but I think it's beautiful, and we're going to make it happen.
And another project that we're working on is getting some youth in Kent area high schools to write their own monologues and plays that are Muslims, and kind of work on showing their identity through that, and perform that throughout the summer. So it's not just eating with Muslims, but kind of empowering and working with youth too that are Muslims, and giving them an opportunity to you know, use their voice the way that they want to.
Alhamdulillah.
We're thinking about doing a play about Luqman Hakim, the wisdom bearer in Islam, because we you know, we want to, as an East African or African American, I guess, we grew up, for example, like Prophet Sulaiman being an Abyssinian, a black prophet. But the other day I was listening to some lectures, and one lecture by Brother Umar Sulaiman, which I really adore, an amazing brother, had this title that said, how come there was never a black prophet? And I'm like, interesting. I clicked on it, and he talked about how, you know, there are no known black prophets, but, you know, some prophets, you know, many of them were brown skin. You know, like Moses was was darker skin, and I'm like, but that's not true, bro. Solomon was, you know, Abyssinian, and so we're the only ones who can do this, you know, especially for our youth. In order for us to give our young people the inspirations that they need. We're not trying to separate Muslims. We're all brothers and sisters, but at the same time, we need to be able to. I think there's the way art can tell stories, or the way you can tell stories through artistic expressions, and you know, there's something more powerful and captivating, and appealing, I think, about when you do something like that. So we're showcasing Muslim movies that are made by Muslims.
Like Bilal?
Like Bilal. Our first one was, what was that movie? The Big Sick?
The Big Sick.
Yeah. Bilal is amazing. We didn't showcase it yet, but we're planning to do that. We saw it together. That's how we met. And of course, the Black Panther.
Wakanda forever.
Yes. So, yeah, we all want to go to Wakanda.
Well, you know, it's interesting. This kind of leads us into maybe a different direction, but the different challenges in the Islamic world. You know, everything is not all sweet and nice and tidy. There are challenges with racism. And when you talk about some of the prophets, you know, it's interesting how they try to portray the prophets a certain way, and even Prophet Jesus around the world, how they've portrayed him as a Caucasian with blonde hair and blue eyes, you know. And, you know, if you just look at the story when supposedly they were looking to find the baby Jesus, you know, when he was born. Now, if he was Caucasian and blonde hair or blue eyes, he would have stood out. You know, so that would have been, you know, that would have been easy to find.
To spot him.
Yeah, and to spot him. So it's interesting how these things with race comes up in religion, period. Not just Islam, but period. So we know that's a big issue here because they've, you know, they've portrayed, you know, if the Son of God is supposed to be the Son of God, if the Son is white, well, then the daddy got to be white, you know?
Of course.
Of course. And just like how they do the prophets, and then how they do, it was what on the Today Show, they unveiled the thing of what was a Nefertiti?
Nefertiti, and it looked like a white woman.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Or even Queen Sheba. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
is white. Well, that's why the Black Panther is resonating. You know, becoming such an incredible and powerful, inspirational movie because for the first time you have a movie that is. The majority of the cast is black people, and the director is black, and the country it's talking about, where it's based, and everything is supposed to be, you know, a black African country. You know, Africa does not all want to be black. We know that. You know, North Africans don't. Many of them, except maybe Moroccans, would be the only ones who oftentimes would say, "Yeah, I'm African," and kind of proud. The rest of them don't want to say they're they're Africans. So, so it's you know, that's why storytelling is just very, very, very powerful. And if you don't tell your own story, and you don't take charge, then others will tell it the way that they see, you know, fit. And
even in the movie itself, it has an interesting, you know, dichotomy of having the African American guy who is trying to identify with his African roots, but he's feeling like, you know, I was left behind, and so he's supposed to be the villain, but you can relate to him because, you know, as an African American, I think, you know, you could see yourself in that, like, well, why can't I be from Wakanda? Why can't I be considered, you know, African? You know, don't leave me behind. And in that same sense, in Islam, and talking about, you know, the racial issues that are in our own groups, it's oftentimes it feels like, well, why can't you consider me Muslim? Because even though I'm black, I'm the majority. You know what I mean? Muslims around, especially in this country and around the world, are, you know,
well, Asians are the majority, but the second largest, is probably,
you know, darker and black people. So it's in that sense, it's kind of funny to talk about that movie and bring it up like that.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. As I think it was Paul Mooney, the comedian. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but go to YouTube and you can look at some of his stuff. And one of the things that he said that when he was talking between the rift between African Americans and Africans, was he said that you all left us and you all didn't come back and get us. You know, and that's very deep and profound. He said any other country would have came and come see about the people and everything, and that kind of stuck with me. And I think we know there is a rift between African Americans and African, but I think Sister Fatia, you described it very well when we had just a small conversation of how the African Americans have gone through so much in this country, and it has benefited other brown and black people when they come in, because the rights have been, you know, laid out for them because of the struggle. I mean, I just let you talk about it because I mean, you like a history book.
Oh, thank you, thank you. No, it really, you know, it upsets me when I think about that, because I have seen Africans, you know, come here and they're like, yeah, we're gonna do our own thing, and you know, I'm gonna move away from the black neighborhoods and you know, whatever. And we don't reach out to our brothers and sisters. And some would say, well, the African Americans do the same thing. They push us away. They don't want to, you know, they're like, you coming here taking what's mine.
Right.
So there is that rift. But I think we don't, what we Africans, when we come here, don't understand is the fact that we often come here and we realize, oh my God, there are so many opportunities. We got to grab everything we can and take advantage of what we can. But then sometimes we looked our brothers and sisters in the Black African American community and say, why didn't they do the same? You know, I came here just now, not too long ago, and I already own a home, and I already have a car, and this and that. Why couldn't they do the same? But what they don't understand oftentimes is that an African who came here, who already have their identity intact,
Right.
you know, and just have one goal of just going to school, working hard, you know, an African American who's got so many other obstacles already working against them, you know, where people see them as, you know, the Black people with baggage. They have too many baggages. We don't want to deal with them. It's easier for you, for the African when they come here, to have doors open for you because you don't have the baggage, you know. You just want to do well, and you don't have all that history that, you know, that you're carrying. And so I think we forget that, and I often see, like, when I think about what this simple film, you know, Black Panther is doing, not only for African Americans, but for Africans, and how African Americans are honoring their African heritage. You know, when I see the way they're honoring, the clothes they're wearing, the way they're so proud, the way, I feel like they're doing that for us. I don't see us doing it for them, you know. So it really angers me, and it also, you know, it angers me the fact that, you know, we're standing on the shoulders of so many giants that fought for the rights we're enjoying right now, and I feel like we don't acknowledge it enough, and as well as, you know, the Muslim community that now feel like they're under siege and they're being targeted. And all of a sudden, you know, we're invoking Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and the civil rights giants. And, but we know how oftentimes brown people treat Black people, you know. So we need to do a better job. We need to not just make acknowledge our pain only when it suits us, but we need to stand up for the rights of all human beings and affirm the humanity of all people, especially groups that have been targeted forever. You know, a lot of us have it better than African Americans do in this country. You know, and thanks to them, but we don't. I feel like we don't show them the respect that.
And even when I came here, I was 8 years old. I moved to Virginia, and I remember talking to my classmates, and one of them, you know, made a racist joke, and I was like, "Hey, what are you?" in my British accent, like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, you're not Black, you're African." And I thought, wait a minute,
what's the
difference? I'm not Black, you know. And it was automatic distinction of like, hey, I want to make sure that you understand your struggle in this country won't be the same.
Exactly.
And so therefore, you should be. I'm not talking about you. You should be happy to be here, essentially. And so it was so confusing to me because I realized at that point there is an automatic distinction that we're taught, you know, from a young age of, if you're an African immigrant, you should just be happy to be here and you'll do better, you know, essentially like, you know, you'll be fine. And it was always, you know, striking to me. And there's definitely, it hurts because, you know, I consider myself American, and Somali. But if I'm walking around and nobody knows, you know, what a typical Somali looks like, I'm still a black, you know, African American at the end of the day. So I know that my history isn't the same, but am I going to get treated, you know, better because my history isn't the same? Or why, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of, it's a little bit confusing sometimes as an immigrant.
Kind of like the Twilight Zone.
Right, right.
Brother Benjamin.
Yeah, I'm glad we in this strain of our conversation because sometimes people ask me when I'm doing a khutbah, you know, why do you talk about race? You know, we're all Muslims. You know, and I try to tell them because when we leave this Jummah prayer and you go and get in your car and I go get in my car, we're in two different worlds. You know? So to bring up race, we have to be conscious of what everybody's going through. We're not conscious of it. If you think that I don't suffer, you think, you know, you won't understand my reality. And one of the attributes of Allah is al-haq. And it's loosely translated as the truth, but it's also translated as the reality. And there's a reality that's going on that I run into all kind of flack when I try to get other Muslims to address these issues. And the point that you made about the civil rights movement and the benefits that a lot of our brothers and sisters from overseas come over here and they just take it for granted. But there was a time when your color, and my color, no matter where you're from, we had to sit in the back of the bus. You know, there were certain drinking fountains. They had black drinking fountain and white drinking fountain. If you went to the movies, you had to sit up in the balcony, you see, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And so it was people like Dr. Martin Luther King. It was people like Ali, you know, Malcolm X, who introduced, and Elijah Muhammad, we would put that out there, who introduced the dignity of us as a people we're dignified. And Dr. Martin Luther King got laws to change on the books so that my brother from Somalia or Morocco or Saudi Arabia can come here, and if he has the money, he can buy a house in any neighborhood he wants to. Before that was not possible. So like you said, they do stand on the shoulders of our great giants and they do not want to deal with it. And this is what eats me up inside when I start, let's have a conversation about this, you know. Oh, no, brother. No, we just stick to the sunnah, brother. You know, we don't talk about that. So just to add on, you know, the thing about race, how did this come about to be such a powerful disease is because of the image they have put Prophet Isa in, you know, as a Caucasian. Now, not only that they put him as a Caucasian, but they also said he's God.
Right.
So now, if I'm looking at the world, and God chose to come into the world through a particular race of people, I think that race is somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
And last thing I'm gonna say on this, you know, Prophet Muhammad forbid pictures of him.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Which is that's the reason.
That's
So
the
no
reason.
group would
Because
say
everybody
that,
can relate
yeah.
to.
Yeah, and this belongs to me.
Right.
And I remember I was in a meeting of imams and some Catholic priests one time. And so there was a brother, everybody was identifying themselves. So this one brother said, he said, yeah, my name is so forth and so forth and so on, and I'm a direct descendant of Prophet Muhammad. Excuse me. So the brother said next to him, he said, well, my name is so and so and so and so. And he says, I'm a direct descendant of Adam and Eve. You know?
Isn't that the truth? Yes.
Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
but he was trying to get some heads up.
Right.
After that, everything he said, people would have been writing it down,
Right.
recording it, you know. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation. So
Yeah, and there's, you know, there's a serious problem in the, you know, within the Islamic community when it comes to racism and how black people are treated. You know, Africans might come here and say, well, you know, the Caucasian Americans see me as African and without the baggage, and so I'm all right here. But when we go to the Middle East, we're Abid.
Abid.
Yes,
Ooh,
yes.
you're a slave.
Exactly.
Oh, ooh.
And
They treat
Somalis and Ethiopians and other Africans are killed. And we have slaves right now happening in Libya. Africans are chained and being sold. And you don't hear a word from the powerful Middle East countries to say anything.
You
in
don't
the
hear a
21st
word from
century.
the scholars. This one,
Yes, and
everybody
from the
talks
scholars.
about the scholars. The
Exactly,
scholars.
yeah.
They don't speak out on these issues.
No. And it is. We talked about the last sermon by our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how he talked about you're just one ummah, the white skin, the black skin, the brown skin. No one is superior to anyone. You're all the same. Yet we know, if we're being honest, our brothers and sisters in the Middle East are complicit in the most horrific racism, the worst there is. I remember I met this young man who was from Saudi Arabia many years ago. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and we became friends, and he was going to USC. He became friends with a lot of people. And one day he said to me, Fathi, you know what living in this country has done for me? And I said, what? And he said, it showed me, or I have learned that when I should be ashamed of myself, my behavior. Because he said, before, when I was in my own country, when I treat people, it was normal to treat certain groups of people with contempt and with, and nobody would tell you you're wrong.
Right.
People would laugh and it'd be just normal because they were considered lesser, But then coming here in this country with all the troubles we might have in America, is still, well, those were the good old days when people were ashamed to admit that they were racist. But not anymore. But he said, now I feel like when I should be ashamed, I feel ashamed and I say, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Well, we thank you all. It's been an interesting topic. And I guess the best thing is like this, the example is follow the prophet, how he did Islam, not all these knuckleheads. We thank everybody for watching, and we wish you peace and prayers. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Oh, that was a beautiful show.
That was short. It went by just like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's always the case when you're talking about
you're having fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But I wanted to bring up something I didn't get a chance to. Was in Africa they had this skin whitener. Rage.
Yes, disgusting.
Yeah.
It's, every other billboard
Wow.
is like, get this cream, get this cream,
It's
get this cream.
disgusting. We